Hi everyone, and welcome to the 8th episode of Slime Time Side Quest, an official Dragon's Den podcast. This is Plattym3.
Yangus.
Platty.
Yangus.
Platty.
Yangus.
Platty.
Yangus.
Platty.
Yangus, Yangus.
Platty.
Yangus. Yangus, Yangus.
Platty, Platty.
Yangus?
Platty.
Yangus, Yangus. Yangus, Yangus!
Platty. Oh, man. Jeez.
Oh, boy.
That was kind of ridiculous. I mean, right there is why I'm going to have to click the explicit button when I upload this podcast.
Oh, definitely. When you said Platty, I almost lost it. Man, I can't believe you went there.
Well, you Yangusing in reply did not help the matter in the least. I mean, I was almost choking here, biting my tongue, trying not to interrupt you.
Okay. Well, with that over, and with now you all remembering what our names are, let's get tonight's main, I guess the side event going. Tonight on Side Quest, we're going to be talking about a whole slew of Pokemon games that are not the mainline games.
So basically you're saying in honor of upcoming Thanksgiving, we're going to ignore the turkey and focus on the side dishes?
Yangus. I mean, exactly. And you and who better to talk about Pokemon side entries than a couple of our returning Side Quest guests. Please welcome back Evan, a.k.a. Eel.
E-A-L.
E-A-L.
Excuse me. And welcome back to Bluestar.
Thank you.
I'll take the laughing as thanks.
It's all the reply we needed.
Yep.
At least we made one person
She's laughing at you,
Yes.
not with you.
That's true.
That's okay. We'll take it. In our head, it's good enough.
The middle part of the Platty and the Yangus conversations really got to her. That's what it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, see, she agrees. It's all good.
I had to mute my microphone, man, so...
Well, I can't even begin to count how many games we're going to talk about here tonight, or even the number of different types of games we're going to talk about. But, we put a ton of thought into the order that we're going in this. So it was carefully discussed, voted on, straws were done, And
I don't remember that part. Did you do that without me?
it was in some chat.
What chat? Not chat I was in.
The super secret chat. You had to know the password.
I might have just been chatting in my head, but
Yeah, that happens a lot too. I mean,
Platty.
Yangus.
So we're gonna start here. I was gonna say with one of the weirder entries, but what the heck? These all kind of get a little bit weird in some regard. But this was definitely something different than a lot of other games in the Pokemon franchise. We're gonna start talking about the Pokemon Ranger games, and there were 3 of them out there. And honestly, up until about 6 months ago, I didn't even know there was a third one. Quickly picked that up. But we'll go in order, at least with these. The first Pokemon Ranger, was released March 23rd, 2006 for the DS. And all I remember clearly about this is about 2 things. One, I thought my hand was going to fall off like the entire time. This is a game so I don't know how else to say it, but like muscularly involved with, like my whole hand was like in a claw gripping the stylus. Because the whole point of this game is you're not a Pokemon trainer. You don't catch them and raise them and breed them and whatever. You're a Pokemon Ranger. And Rangers collect the Pokemon to help other Pokemon, but it's a very temporary bond. They're not like joining you forever. And to catch the Pokemon in these games, you have to draw circles around them. On the lower of the DS screens, on the touch screen, the Pokemon's running around, and I don't know how it's, maybe one of you guys will be able to remember better than me how it's like talked about in the game, but you're drawing circles around them to like calm them down, to tame them for a certain amount of time. And we were talking beforehand, and this first one, each different Pokemon had a certain number of times that you had to circle it as they're moving around, as they're trying to attack it, as things are flying out of the sky. The But this first game, you had to continually circle the Pokemon, one continuous motion. You couldn't lift up the stylus or your number reset, and you had to try again.
You also couldn't take any damage or your counter reset.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of other things that are served to make this game much harder than it probably needed to be.
I was gonna say, it sounds like it's kind of throws some curveball difficulty things at you for being a Pokemon game of all things.
Oh, absolutely. I actually never beat this game because of how hard the mechanics were. I tried to play it several times, and I'd always get to the exact same place where you have to capture a Salamence by drawing like 36 or something consecutive loops around him while he takes up half the screen and he's calling meteors down on the screen, and you can't touch any of the meteors, you can't touch the Salamence, you can't touch anything, and you have to do it 36 times.
Oh my.
At the same time, I wasn't allowed to leave that dungeon, so I was just sort of stuck there, and all I could do was go challenge this Salamence and throw myself at this brick wall over and over and over again. One time I did actually beat him, but
so
then,
do you get
20...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
But then 20 minutes later I got stuck on the next boss, so...
Oh.
And I think that's as far as I got.
Is this a game like where the Pokemon that you have with you help you, or like is it just like you yourself doing everything?
Yeah. So Platy was talking earlier about how the drawing circles around Pokemon actually works in the game. It's kind of like I want to say like a Harry Potter magic wand type thing where you're sort of standing off to the side and doing some voodoo magic to try to calm these Pokemon down. The Pokemon that you have already befriended, each one has some sort of, battle support move, and some others have a field support move. So, you can catch a Lapras and use it to ride across some water. You find some electric-type Pokemon that might, stun whatever you're trying to capture for a little while. But once you use that Pokemon's ability, they then go back to being a wild Pokemon, and you no longer have their support anymore.
Okay, all right. I was never sure with these games if it was like you caught them for yourself, not like like a regular trainer would, but like you were able to recruit them, as it were, just out of like goodwill from them helping you, or you helping them, or something like that.
It was all very temporary. Like there might be some tall grass blocking your way to the next screen, and you'd have to make sure you got yourself a fire Pokemon maybe somewhere that could, and you use like a field support move that would burn the grass down or stuff like that.
Okay.
And it was tiered too, so you needed
cut down the really.
You needed a.
You could clearly.
You need a proportionally strong. You need a proportionally strong Pokemon. Say you need like one with 1 star can break a tiny rock. And then you need one with 2 stars to break a bigger rock, and then 3 stars. So it was tiered like that. And Golem could break this giant rock. A Geodude could break the small rock. And there would be obstacles in the map, and you'd have to recruit them somewhere else sometimes. Completely different map. Have to go off and find them, and then bring them back here. Break this thing blocking your way, and then they would just leave. So you couldn't even use them in battle.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, it was a lot of kind of like Rocket Slime, where you'd have to make sure you got the right ingredient to throw into the right thing to get to the other side of the map, or you had to pick up that little Slime Knight guy on you sometimes to definitely get past somebody.
Yes.
So.
Okay.
That's a good analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I actually did beat this game, and I remember very specifically. I mean, there's a weird thing to remember, but I was playing it was almost the end of the year. That year it came out in 2006. I was watching college football games, end of the season, and I beat it the night that Saddam Hussein was killed. Of all things, it was one of those things that was on late night after a bowl game. They're like, "Oh, breaking news from Iraq tonight. We're getting footage of Saddam Hussein being hung." There I am, circling freaking Pokemon. And I'm like, "Yep, this is what I'm doing for the world tonight."
They ever ask you where you were when Saddam Hussein died? You can say playing Pokemon Ranger.
Hey, Pokemon Ranger. Yep.
I was playing Pokemon Ranger in my house, and I saw on the TV he got hung.
I mean, there's about there's about 3 or 4 gaming memories I have of exact moments when things happened. And yeah, this is one. Another one is I beat Dragon Quest V for the first time, and I remember my girlfriend coming in and trying to tell me, Colombia had exploded, and I was like, what? The country of Colombia has... How did the whole country explode? And she's like, no, the space shuttle. I was like, oh. So, yeah, that Saturday morning in early 2000s when it blew up over Texas, like, I was fighting Mortimer right at that moment.
Mortimer was Dragon Quest 6.
Yeah, that's Dragon Quest 6.
Yep, that's right. Yep, no, it was 5, though. Stupid.
Well, the good
Trying to
thing
make a
is, for as
point.
much as Platy doesn't like Dragon Quest 6, at least he remembers the final boss.
And as
Yeah,
much as I love
yeah.
Dragon Quest 5, I know how to nail that one. But yeah.
I mean, it does go to show how memorable Nimzo is as a boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So memorable, the movie cut him out. The film adaptation.
Yep.
But this was not the only Pokemon Ranger game. Oh no. They went back to this formula and at least improved some stuff. The second Pokemon Ranger game was called Shadows of Almia, and it released a couple years after the first. And you know what I was just thinking of? Was the first game the one that you could get the egg that then you could transfer to like Diamond or Pearl?
Manaphy, yep.
Yes,
Yep.
I believe so.
Yeah, I was going to ask which one of these games had that, because I remember that being a big thing back when Diamond and Pearl were coming out, because I remember Nintendo Power like specifically pointed out, like, hey, you need this particular Pokemon Ranger game so you can have a chance to get the legendary Pokemon Manaphy or something like that.
Yep. You know, back in the age before DLC, they had a way to get another $40 out of you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all three of them had legendaries you can transfer over. I think one of them had Darkrai, I think.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Don't ask me. I never played any of these
worked
games.
Great
So
for them the first time.
Pokemon's not really my jam, so I don't really know. So
Welcome to Yangus on our next Pokemon cast.
yep. As the listeners at home will realize, I'm not really going to be familiar with a lot of these side quests or spin-off games, other than a few.
I'll have to look that up. But yeah, so this came out 2 years later, and I'll let Blue talk more about the quality of life improvements that this game had.
Well, for one, I could actually beat this game, so that was great. They changed the mechanics so that instead of having to get, X number of loops around a Pokemon, you had to, fill up a friendship bar, and every time you loop around the Pokemon, it would fill up that bar a little bit, and that actually would go up depending on how high level your Pokemon Ranger device, which is called a styler, was. So, going back and finding, weaker Pokemon later, you could get them up in just one loop instead of having to go around a bunch of times, which was very nice, and it made the game much more enjoyable and much more beatable. So, yeah, I liked this game a lot. I remember the story was amazing, and, even going on into the third one, Guardian Signs, I don't know that there was even a whole lot that was changed between the two of them, because they sort of nailed down what they wanted their formula to be at that point.
Yeah, and geez, I'd never even... So, of course, looking at my own personal defeated list, I didn't beat this one. I know I had it, but this is one I did not finish. I think it was one that, the gimmick mechanic of circling, even though it was easier, I do remember crapping out on this one, thinking like, okay, I get it. Draw circles. And I mean, I've never been the hugest of Pokemon fans. I'll play all the mainline games, but I'm not one to fill up my Pokédex. It's like once I roll credits, post game, battle arena, all that crap, like nope, I'm done. I put in my 20-30 hours. I'm like, great, I beat it, I had fun. I'll play another game in 2 years when another one comes out. But I did not finish this one. But about a year ago, another podcast that I was on was going to do a couple different Pokemon side entries. And somebody mentioned like the 3 Ranger games. I'm like, what? There were 3? So I quickly grabbed the last one, and it reminded me a lot of the second one. Yeah, like I don't remember it. Nothing in that game seemed new to me, like you said, gameplay-wise.
So I guess the one thing that was new in Guardian Signs is that they had Guardian Signs that you could draw on the touchscreen in order to summon legendary Pokemon. So I think the 3 main ones from that game were Suicune, Entei, and Raikou. So, Entei could smash rocks, Raikou could jump over large distances, and Suicune could run on water. And so rather than actually having to capture them in order for the single use of their power, you could just use the sign to call them. And so that was kind of a cool, hey, this legendary Pokemon is my friend type of mechanic. But that was really the only thing that stuck out to me as different in that third game.
I remember a little bit of the story of this one. There was time travel in this one.
I don't remember much about it.
It took place, you were on like islands, and you were trying to like first calm down the Pikachu or whatever on one island, and then you were going to another island, and there were like ancient ruins there, and at some point you stood on something and it like do like Travel Door and Dragon Quest or something like that, and then you were standing in the same place, but there was a temple all around you, and it was like, whoa. And I only made it like 5 or 6 hours through, but at one point you learn like you're traveling back and forth in time like 500 years on the island, like going back to when everything was there, whereas
so it's Dragon Quest 7 essentially.
Yeah. Quantum leap, trying to put right what once went wrong. But yeah, it had all the same mechanics with, you needed the stronger Pokemon to beat the bigger rock, or there was a bigger fire raging blocking your way of going up the tower, so you needed a second level water Pokemon to put out the bigger fire. And these games were funny because the Pokemon were always just hopping along next to you as you're walking around. Once you circled once you captured it, they'd just be happily bopping along next to you, walking around, and you'd only have something like 5 or 6 that you could take with you at any one time.
Yeah, it was actually funny because I booted up my Game Complete save in Shadows of Almia the other day, and literally I had all 3 Reggies following me, plus a couple of Evolutions. So that was pretty fun to walk around.
That'd be pretty fun walking around with the 3 Reggies.
Giant golems following me.
Yep.
So yeah, this is actually a game I do want to get back to. There's very few. Was this on the 3DS? I think it was 2010. No, maybe not then.
No, 2011 was when the 3DS came out.
Yeah, I think they were all 3 vanilla DS.
Yeah. Okay. And I remember buying this, like I said, about a year ago, and then I couldn't find it a few months ago, and realized that my 3DS holder had a little thing in the back of it that holds a couple games in there. I was like, oh, look what I found. There it is. But this game actually might be the one that's in my 3DS right now, so I gave it 5 hours over a couple nights, like, hey, this is pretty good. And then the podcast happened, and I went right back to other things I was playing. But they're fun games. I mean, a lot of dexterity is needed. I always thought I was going to crack my DS screen or my 3DS screen, but those things proved a lot tougher.
They don't make things like they used to.
I don't think you'd want to be doing this with a stylus on your Switch screen. That would make me a lot more nervous.
Yikes.
So you'll probably never see another Pokemon Ranger game like that. The fact that they kind of abandoned it for 3DS times, and it's been 10 years, that may be done. Although we're going to talk about other side entries here that are back after much longer breaks.
Okay, but at the same time, I feel like they might have missed an opportunity with being able to do it with a Wiimote.
Oh gosh! Hell yeah! You'd get some good arm movements in there. Spin your arm 900 times.
Just do some windmills to capture some Pokemon.
I mean, you could go right back to it now with the Switch remotes.
You probably could. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will say you can get them on the Wii U. So
these games?
Yes, Virtual Console. They have one on the Wii U.
Mm-hmm. So do you draw on the big controller? Do you draw on that?
The gamepad.
I don't think I don't think you can project them on the TV or anything, but I think you play it on the gamepad.
Well, the gamepad would be like the bottom screen. The TV would be the top screen.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, but the Wii U is dead, so we don't talk about that.
Actually, we just talked about that earlier today.
We did.
You can play a lot of these games on the Wii U.
It was a great virtual console machine.
It is. I love it. I love my Wii U.
To this day, I think I've played a Wii U like 5 minutes. I did one Mario Kart race on it at my brother-in-law's house at one point, and I thought, ooh, this is fun. Maybe I should get one. And that thought is 6 or 7 years old at this point.
Okay, but the default game that came with the Wii U, Nintendo Land, is actually a great party game.
Yeah,
It has
it's
nothing to do
That
with
no one
Pokemon,
ever.
but
That was actually a good party game because I had gotten the Wii U, and I'm really still surprised with this year's later. I had gotten that as a surprise Christmas gift the year that it came out, and I invited some of my buddies over because they were back from college, and we ended up playing Nintendo Land, I think, for like 5 hours straight because we were just playing all the different games, and we had a good time with it. Like, the Wii U did have some pretty good games on it, but there's some questionable decisions there. Yep. Well, I think the biggest shot in the foot was calling it the Wii U. They really should have called it something else. They really should. Because it messed up marketing. So everybody's like, oh, it's just a peripheral for your Wii. Why do I got to buy a whole new console? Apparently everybody sounds like that. So, but yeah. Anyway, we should probably keep moving along the list. We got quite a few games to talk about.
Yes, we do. So the next sub-side series, I don't know how many prefixes I want to add there, I would say is definitely the biggest. It's had the most. It's actually had one of them even remade in the past year. And that's the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games. Kind of just like Ranger, which came out in March of 2006. These games came out in 2006 too. A little bit later in the year. I actually looked this up because this is another one of those very specific gaming memories I have. They came out either the day before or the day after Rocket Slime did. I think it's probably the only time in my life I went to GameStop on 2 consecutive days. And the very first one, the first Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, had 2 versions. It actually had a Game Boy Advance version, and it had a DS version that played pretty much the same way.
Yep.
And if you've played a Mystery Dungeon game, the gameplay mechanics are pretty much the same. You go into a dungeon, you take one step, the enemies take one step, there's crap laying all on the ground. You can do regular attacks. Your Pokemon can do special attacks like Thunderbolt and whatever. The interesting part about this one is you are a Pokemon. Isn't it that you've turned into a Pokemon in the first game?
Yes.
Turned
in
into
all of the games, it's that you've turned into a Pokemon.
Okay, I knew you always controlled a Pokemon. I didn't know that you were always like supposedly turned into one.
Yeah. So how the first game starts up is you have to do a little questionnaire, and then depending on how you whatever your answers were, the game will be like, oh, so you're like this type of person. You have this and this such trait. Your best fit for a Pokemon is going to be, and you might get Pikachu, or in like the first game's case, in the first Mystery Dungeon's case, it was the first 3 generations of Pokemon. So you got like Pikachu, one of the other like starter Pokemon from the first 3 generations, and then a few miscellaneous ones like Machop, or is that what that one's called? Machop?
Machop.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right.
Oh yeah.
I'm good with Pokemon names. but like you have stuff like a few oddball ones too, like Skitty, Meow, and probably the best choice of all you could have ended up with, Psyduck, which is what I got when I played Blue Rescue Team back in the day.
Hey, Eevee was a pretty good choice too.
I mean, it's not Psyduck, so
Okay, when I played as Eevee, it was a great game all the way up till the point where I got really impatient about wanting to evolve, and then I evolved myself into a Flareon and regretted it for the rest of my life. So.
I regret everything. You just look in the pool of water there, it's like, I regret everything. But with the first Mystery Dungeon games, like what Platy said, there were the Game Boy Advance version and the DS version. They were just called Red Rescue Team and Blue Rescue Team, respectively. Mm-hmm. And they were pretty much the same games identically. Like, they had the same content and everything. Only differences were there were a few Pokemon that were exclusive to each version, but you could use...
God, that's revolutionary.
I know, it's crazy.
How did they think of that?
But you could use passwords to transfer one to the other. So, like... God, I think like one of the examples was like Porygon and Porygon 2 were, or it's Porygon and one other one, just for example, were like on the separate versions. But if you used a password, you could get them in the Game Boy Advance version or the DS version. It's kind of like if you guys have ever played the Zelda Oracle games on the Game Boy Color. It's that same sort of concept where you can type in the password from the one game, put it into the other game, and boom, there you go. You get the reward for it.
Was there something that you could do by putting, with the original DSs, you could put the Game Boy Advance card in the slot and then have the DS card in the other slot?
Right. I think there was something you could do, but I have no idea at this point what that would be.
Was it rescuing if you got defeated?
Yeah.
I think I might have been. I might have been trading stuff too. I think that might have been an alternative way to the password thing we were talking about.
I knew there were options with that, but
yeah, I only had the DS one because that was kind of at the point where I really was losing interest in Pokemon. But when I saw this Mystery Dungeon game coming out, I'm like, oh, it looks like an interesting idea for a game where, because it's sort of like the reason, like when I was a kid, I preferred Dragon Quest monsters over Pokemon because I enjoyed having all of these monsters like with me and like I got to directly control them all, and I felt more like I was playing as them. So when I saw the Mystery Dungeon games had the concept where like, oh, you're the Pokemon now, it's like, okay, cool, that's that's something I can get behind.
Mm-hmm. And I'd played the Torneco game both on the PS1 and the original one on the Super Nintendo, fan translated. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, I know what these games are.
Yeah, it was, what was that? I think what really got me to get this game too was, I think I've said this on the Den and other places too, but when I would say like the peak when I really liked Pokemon was when the third generation came out, because as a little kid, that's when like everybody would talk about Pokemon when it first came out, like either the TV show or the games or the trading cards, all that stuff. So when this particular spin-off game came out, the first one, and since I was really into the third generation, I'm just like, okay, it's going to focus on the first three. That's pretty cool. And I think in this game, too, if you do certain reward or like certain quests and stuff like that, you get special statues near your base of like some of the Gen 4 Pokemon. Because I think it was at that point we were just starting to find out about some of them, like Lucario and Mr. Mime Jr., and I think Bonsly was another one you could get.
Yeah, that makes sense, because this was actually the very first handheld game that I ever had, and I remember very soon, like later that school year maybe, getting Pokemon Diamond for the first time. Because, up until that point, I was a weird kid, and I definitely never wanted to play a video game where I played as a boring human. So let's play as a Pokemon, because that's way cooler.
I can totally relate to you on that, because that's pretty much the reason why I didn't play Dragon Warrior 1 through 3 on the Game Boy Color when I was a kid, because it's like, why would I want to play as a human guy when I can be this kid controlling and fighting with all these monsters? Why would I want to play as a person? Boy, young me was stupid.
Hey, that makes two of us, I guess.
We're part of an exclusive club. But I don't know why I did this too with Blue Rescue Team, but back when I was in high school, I for some reason traded in my copy, even though I put like 60, 70 hours into it, like trying to do all the dungeons. Yeah, I got a lot of time.
Oh, there was a lot of extra stuff.
Yeah, and there's a lot of dungeons and ones you have to. Luckily, that's one of the nice things that they changed with this remake that I'm going to get to. But I traded in my copy. Of course, I felt stupid about it, and it's one of those games where it's like, man, I wish I hadn't gotten rid of that because it's actually pretty good. But luckily, this year, I believe it was May that the remake came out, which is just called Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX. So it's pretty much a remake of both versions of the game, like all the content and all the exclusive Pokemon and all that stuff. That's just all in one big package. It looks really nice on the Switch. It's got a cool, almost color book art style to it, I would say, because you notice there's a bit of an effect on like the trees and the backgrounds and everything. But what's cool about playing this remake is that I do remember stuff from the original, like with how the storyline stuff kind of gets set up and everything, and how you do the opening questionnaire and all that kind of stuff. But it's cool seeing some of the changes, because I remember in the original, like, you were a lot more limited with what you could take into a dungeon depending on the size of the Pokemon. In this one, it seems like they got rid of the size mechanic, and you can end up with a party of 8 Pokemon traveling with you at once in a dungeon if you're able to recruit them.
That is so wild to me.
It's
still
crazy. Like, I've just been kind of messing with it this week just to, get to see some of the changes and everything. And I haven't unfortunately gotten too far into the game at this point, but like that's the big one I've seen where you get all these Pokemon. I don't remember if this was in the original or not, but there's rare qualities that Pokemon can have when they join you, where it's stuff like, oh, if you find a party member who ends up like sent off to another side of a dungeon all by themselves, that they'll get a big boost to their stats until they regroup with the rest of the party. Or you'll have one where if any of your Pokemon that are with you have a held item, whether it's a ribbon or a berry or something like that, and if somebody uses a move that would knock it out of their hands, it'll affect the whole party. You don't have to worry about that getting knocked out of their hands. And there's other stuff too like that, but basically what you want to kind of look out for when you're recruiting them is like, okay, what sort of rare quality do you bring into the party? And there's some other stuff too that I've seen from footage. Like the big one is that you no longer have to redo any dungeons with legendary Pokemon in the post game. If you can beat the Pokemon at the end of it, it's guaranteed going to join you then with its camp. You don't have to worry about replaying it until, now it decided to join. So that's a big change for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this game I remember enjoying quite a bit. Looking back on my completed game list, knowing that it came out a day removed from Rocket Slime, I beat this an entire month before I beat Rocket Slime. So this game won out in my playtime over Rocket Slime, which I absolutely love. So this was pretty good.
That's sacrilegious.
These were
for a
very
Dragon
long
Quest fan. How
games.
could you?
They were. You had, you used to get little things in the mailbox every day, requests. And you could just endlessly do requests from like, hey, I lost my Charmander friend on level 7 of this dungeon. Can you go get him?
Yep.
And you could almost not advance the story and just do those requests over and over and over and over.
Well, Explorers of Time and Darkness, the sequel, those were like ridiculously long. Like I would play them morning, noon, night, and it would take me days and days and days and days to play it. And I was like, I'm playing this like all day, and I feel like I'm not even halfway through. And it had like tons of post-game content. Like half the game was post-game. Like it was a very long game.
Yeah, as much as, I am partial to Blue Rescue Team because it was one of my first games ever, Explorers of Time is actually probably my favorite Pokemon game ever.
Best Pokemon story at the very least, I would say.
Oh my god, it's amazing.
I was blown away. How wild that story was.
So what was the story?
I almost don't want to say because it's not explicitly shown to you at the very beginning.
Oh, okay.
It's like something that kind of evolves later on.
Evolves, but
Ooh.
So yeah, these games, Explorers of Time and Darkness, came out a couple years later in 2008, still on the DS, and I beat the Darkness one. I'll be honest, I have no memory of this one.
What?
I really don't.
Especially because you labeled it as Explorers of Space in our notes.
Exactly, and looking at my completed game list right here, it says Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of Darkness. So, yep, I can't even remember from looking at my own list what it's called.
I did have a really weird experience with this game when I first got it because this was like when I first realized Pokemon as a phenomenon was dead. Like as a thing that like was just sweeping across schools was dead. And I was with my mother at the opening, like when it first came out. We were in the parking lot of like a Toys R Us waiting to go in, and there was just like lines of people outside. And we were like, wow, a lot of people lining up for this Pokemon game. And then we go in once the doors open, and everyone's there for the Nintendo Wii. They did restocks for the Nintendo Wii. And I was the only one there who wanted Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time.
So, what was the Explorers of Sky?
That was kind of like the Emeralds equivalent.
Okay.
It was. They added a couple of extra things. I didn't actually play this game, but one of the things that was added was Shaman and Arceus as Pokemon that were part of the story and could be recruited. They also added it was some sort of cafe type of thing. I don't 100% know all of the details about it because I never got the game because I loved Explorers of Time so much that I never thought that I would need it. Years later, I probably should have, just invested and played Explorers of Sky over and over again instead. But c'est la vie, I guess.
Sky is one of the more expensive Pokemon games. I'm looking at eBay right now, and with just the case, it's like $80.
Oh, wow.
Just the cartridge alone is, I'm seeing a $40 eBay bid with 4 days to go.
My goodness.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX does well enough that we'll get to see remakes of the sequels then, because I never played them back when they came out. I still have. I've never played them. Period. I guess. And I mean, I've heard plenty of good things about. Oh God, what did you guys say? It was Sky is the one that's the Emerald version.
Correct.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I remember you, EAL, talking about, EAL, talking about that game in particular on the Den a lot and recommending that one. And I'm hoping that we'll get to see that one remade within like the next 2 years or something. Because I mean, I've been enjoying replaying Mystery Dungeon on my Switch, and it's not really a genre that I normally go for RPGs, but I would happily play the sequel if they remade it and brought it to modern systems. I think that'd be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I would totally buy a remake.
I would die happy if I would be able to die happy if they made this remake.
I know, that's why I'm so happy that they remade this game too, or Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team, because like I said, I enjoyed that one so much that when I saw they were remaking, it's like, oh, that's really cool. So I hope that they keep this trend going, and they'll do the next one then.
Well, hopefully they don't do this next one. Just kidding. But the third one was called Gates to Infinity. This one came out in 2012, and this is 3DS, I believe, right?
This is 3DS.
This is 3DS. I remember that this was one I bought. It's the first game I ever paid full price for on digital 3DS. Like one Saturday morning, I was bored like 8 years ago, and I was like, oh, look, another Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. It's been a few years. It was like 4 years after Time and Darkness, and I was like, wow. Didn't have kids. I used to wake up on Saturday morning. My wife would work Saturdays, and I'm like, well, I got nothing else to do all day. Let me buy this. And so I've had this game for about 7-8 years now. I've put 12 hours total into it. And just, I don't know, Blue, you're going to talk about the town building mechanics. I think I just got so caught up into there's so many little things I need to be doing, I'd get distracted. And then I wouldn't play it, or I'd boot it up, and I'm like, oh my god, where am I? Should I go to this, or should I work on this? And it always, like, freezes me up. Like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. So I have about 40 hours on my save file on this, and I remember generally, expecting Explorers of Time 2.0 and being kind of disappointed that it wasn't that. But I do remember really liking the story a lot. I think I sort of powered through that rather than, going back and trying to grow my town and all of that, because looking at my save file, my town was kind of sad. But I remember being very into the story, and I very clearly remember how much I cried when I beat it, because the ending was so sad. My mother was very worried about me because I was crying so hard. And then after that point, I was sort of expecting an Explorers of Time, style post-game, and I never really got that. So I think I put the game down pretty soon after, because I saw that it wasn't going to do the same thing that Explorers of Time did. Looking back, maybe there would have been something if I would have, sometimes they save a story flag for, doing the 3 or so random missions after a big story event until the next thing starts up. So maybe that would have happened, because I fairly evidenced by the fact that I am still like a level 43 Oshawott in that game. I think there was still something preventing me from evolving my character, which means that maybe there was more story that I never got to, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the gameplay mechanics, was this one more, you didn't just keep going down and then popping back out? Like, I remember there was like specific exits to these dungeons. I feel like you were moving through the world in this one more. Or am I completely not?
No, I think there were a lot of places in the story for all three games where rather than going back to town at the end of the day, you'd sort of, be on the run or go on an expedition, and you'd go through several dungeons at once.
Oh, okay.
So, you'd make it through one dungeon and it'd be like, okay, we did it. Let's, make camp on the side of this mountain for the day.
Mhm.
And conveniently, there's a save stone and a storage unit here before we tackle the next area of the trek tomorrow. And I do think there was a lot of that in Gates to Infinity, especially towards the end of the main story.
I do remember this. There was a lot of depressing things in this throughout the story, and I think that one kind of got to him. When this is not a happy-go-lucky Pokemon story at the beginning. There was a lot of the Pokemon fighting with each other and having to get over it. And
yeah, because spoilers maybe, because it's been a long time since I played the game, but I'm fairly certain that there was some force in the world that decided that, the general public of Pokemon was not, worthy to keep existing, and so they just sort of started to freeze the world over, and so Pokemon started going crazy, and I think that's kind of the main premise for, why you need to go on your adventures, and sort of your partner Pokemon being like, we need to build this Pokemon paradise to be the happiest place ever, is sort of the contrast to that.
Well, my experience with the first two games was that these weren't super, happy-go-lucky games to begin with. I remember in the first game, you're, run out of town because they think you're dangerous. And you spend, a good chunk of the game, being chased into, the woods by, your neighbors.
And see, I remember no story from the first two, so you might be very right. This is a game that I've played little by little over the past, 4 or 5 years. The other ones I'm at least 12 years removed on, so... All right. Well, so the last one that they did on the 3DS, Super Mystery Dungeon, I always heard very good things about this one. This is the only one that I never even touched, though. Is it better?
That's interesting that you say that. So I remember having really, really high hopes going into it because, it's Generation 6. They're every single Pokemon is going to be available, which is one of the things that wasn't the case in Gates to Infinity. And I guess they didn't learn their lesson when they made Sword and Shield last year. But there were a lot of weird things about it, too. I remember liking the story, but at the same time, it was an explorer's time. When I beat the main story, there wasn't anything else after that to keep me going around and collecting things. It was also weird because they changed a lot of the normal mechanics. The recruitment in all of the games previous would be, when you defeat a Pokemon in a dungeon, it has a certain chance to be like, hey, you seem pretty cool, I want to go with you. But that wasn't the case in Super Mystery Dungeon. In Super Mystery Dungeon, you had what they called a connection orb, and as you, sort of made friends with Pokemon and completed their requests, essentially by completing quests on the connection orb like you would do for the job posting board in the previous games, you would end up, essentially recruiting the Pokemon. And rather than taking 4 into a dungeon, or 8 as you can in DX, you actually were stuck in 3-member teams, which was weird to me. And I pulled it up and it's like, hey, look at me, I'm level 32 because that's as far as I ever got. Let's go into a dungeon and see what happens. And I actually died because it was only me, my partner, and then a Dragonite who was very over-leveled. But there were only 3 of us, and it was kind of sad. And I died, and then I turned the game off and put it down. So that was interesting. Although, granted, the Mystery Dungeon games always have very strange difficulty curves and strange difficulty spikes all over the place. So that's possible that, I just ran into one of those without knowing. The other interesting thing about Super Mystery Dungeon, though, is with the world that it's in. Previously, every game had a single hub town, and this was the one area that you'd explore for the entire game. Everything else is you'd go to a dungeon select screen and go out there. Super Mystery Dungeon actually had 5 continents that you could travel to, and you could talk to all these Pokemon in all of these different towns. So it sort of made the world a lot more immersive to a degree. But towards the end of the game, I had so many requests and so many dungeons to go to that it essentially ended up being more screen transitions, because rather than just going to the one dungeon select screen, I'd have to go ride the Lapras liner to this other continent, and then I'd have to run through that town to get to that con dungeon select screen. But yeah, I liked the story, but the series sort of set itself up for failure by not following through on what they did with Explorers of Time and Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
You think at that point... Nope, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, you guys were talking about this. I feel like the only thing I ever really heard about this is like, yay, they finally did one of these games right, which was weird to me because I'm like, they're all pretty similar. I mean, yeah, you've got stories and everything, but I mean, it's a mystery dungeon game. At the end of the day, you're moving block by block and whatever. But looking at Metacritic, like this one is scoring like 10 to 15 points higher than all the other DS ones, which it's kind of weird. I'm like, okay. And then hearing what you're saying, Blue, doesn't seem like the most memorable.
See, okay, so I remember the story didn't make me cry as much as Gates to Infinity did, but I do remember enjoying it, as its own narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I guess sort of the big bad thing that was happening in the world is Pokemon were randomly being turned to stone, and you had to sort of figure out, hey, what is the mystery? Why is this happening? But after I finished this main story, I'm talking about this. I'm totally getting vibes of what Drippy Slimestar went through with Ni no Kuni 2, and where my expectations are so high from Explorers of Time that maybe I could have enjoyed these games more. And Super Mystery Dungeon is one that I think I might benefit from going back and playing again. Because there's totally time for that, and I totally don't have like 8,000 games to go play.
Exactly. All right, well, I think we have covered Mystery Dungeon to death. We have plumbed the dungeons of all these. So 4 games and a remake. So yeah, they've done 5 Mystery Dungeon games. It's something that obviously must sell well enough to keep going back to. Anybody else have any more comments on Mystery Dungeon before we move on?
What Pokemon is everybody?
I forced it to be Torchic, because Torchic's Blaziken's my favorite.
Well, I already
Man,
said
I don't
mine.
remember which one I got. And I've
I
got
couldn't
no
believe
memory.
back in the day that I actually got Psyduck as my Pokemon. I'm like, what the hell? But I feel like I have a connection to that Pokemon because with where I work, I get headaches all the time from some of the people I work with. So I can understand. I have this connection. And funny enough, I think I posted about this on the Den, but last year for Christmas at my work, we did a gift exchange thing, and the kid that got my name, he ended up getting me these 3 little Pokemon, just like soft keychain things that I could put on my keys or whatever, and one of them was a Psyduck. I don't think that was just a coincidence.
All right, well, moving to one I've not played. I don't know if anybody's played this, but Evan. But Pokemon Pinball, Ruby and Sapphire.
Yeah, it's a great game. It was, I don't remember how I got it. I just remember playing it all the time when I was like a kid. It was like a Game Boy Advance game. It was literally just a pinball game. It had 2 boards though. It had a Ruby and a Sapphire board, and you would get different Pokemon depending on which board you were on. They both looked different. Like I remember the Sapphire one was much longer, like lengthwise. The Ruby one was a lot smaller. And I remember playing them a ton as a kid, but I remember I gave it away to someone and I just completely disappeared from my memory until I was poking around on the Wii U Virtual Console and I saw it there, and I was like, you know what? I'm feeling nostalgic for this game. I never finished this Pokédex. Let's go for it. And I, at the same time, I was doing like this binge rewatch of The League from FX on Netflix.
Great. Oh, I love that series.
It had like 7 seasons, and I think I watched the entire show in the length of time that I completed the Pokédex. I think I might have missed 1 or 2 Pokemon and finished off this year or last year. But it's surprisingly difficult to complete this Pokédex. Like I remember Latios and Latios, each individually, you only have a 1% chance of bumping into them when you enter Ketchum mode. And oh my god, getting Rayquaza, that was an actual nightmare. I think you had to catch upwards of at least 30 Pokemon in a single game or so. It was this weird thing where to fight the legendaries, you would catch 3 Pokemon, and then a bonus stage would pop up, and you would do that. And I think you had to do 2 bonus stages before you could fight one of the legendaries. And it was Kyogre or Groudon, and then you would do that again, and you'd fight Kyogre or Groudon, and I think you had to do that again, and then it'd be Rayquaza or Rayquaza, and you had to beat Rayquaza twice, and you had to beat Groudon twice, and you had to beat Kyogre twice. And if you messed up, you had to do it all over again. The process of doing, Groudon or Kyogre or Rayquaza, and it was an actual nightmare. I think I only ever actually pulled it off once. Obviously, that was the only time you ever need to do it, just the once, to complete the Pokédex. But it was kind of amazing. I even was able to complete it, considering all like the weird stuff. Like there was a Jirachi that would occasionally pop up, but you wouldn't necessarily be likely to see it. I think I maybe saw him 2 or 3 times. But it's like a really good game when you're like, you just want to sit down and watch something on the TV and you just mute the game and you're playing the game while watching whatever it is you're watching. It was a fun game to re-experience. I would definitely recommend it if everyone's got a Game Boy Advance or a DS lying around. I don't think it's a particularly expensive game to find on the secondary market.
And how many Pokemon were in that one?
I want to say it was either 200 or 205.
Wow.
And some can only be found by hatching like the eggs, which wasn't like super difficult, but then there was a weird system where you had to catch a Pokemon and then evolve it a specific way. So you couldn't say catch Torchic, lose, and then play again and evolve Torchic. It had to be from the time that you were playing that specific round. So if you yeah, it wasn't fun doing that, I'm gonna be honest, because because you would, like, a lot of them were pretty rare to find to begin with, and then you had to evolve them twice sometimes, depending on which one it was.
Mm-hmm.
And this is assuming you don't fail on the board and you lose all your lives or whatever, because that's pretty easy to do. It's kind of tricky because if you end up at the opposite ends of the bumpers, I think, you have a Pichu and a Pikachu, and they can zap the Pokeball back into play, but that required getting like a special bonus. Normally, you would have a Pikachu and you had to power him up before he could stop a Pokeball and shoot it back into play. Otherwise, it was pretty much guaranteed to fall down into the pit. There was a weird way where you can cause the board to shake, and if you were good with the bumpers, you can get the board to shake just right, and it would bounce back into play, and you can hit it with one of the bumpers, and you can get back into it. It was really tricky. I think I only ever did it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, look it online. You can get it for right around $20.
Yeah, and that's about a good price for it, I would say. I wouldn't go running out to get it for like $40, but I'd say like $20, probably 20 hours of your time. $1 an hour, basically. And it's one of those games where literally you can play it and then put it down. You don't ever have to pick it up again. There's no story. You can decide that you don't want to play it ever again. You never got to play it ever again. You don't feel like you've missed out on something.
Pinball game not having a story. What?
It was pretty featured, to be quite honest. Besides having a story.
There was a pinball RPG with a story. I played it last summer called Rollers of the Realm on Vita. I really like that little game. It's only about 5 or 6 hours long, but talk about fun pinball. So, all right, well, moving right along. Another one Evan wants to talk about. I don't know who else has played this one, but Pokemon Colosseum, and then the XD Gale of Darkness.
I mean, I have the strategy book for Colosseum, but it was one that I think I wanted to get at one point on my GameCube, but it's just one of those things I never did. But, I mean, if I got the chance to play it now, I would.
Not a very good time to get into it. GameCube games seem to be taking off right now, and they're very expensive on eBay at the moment. Yeah, so this was actually kind of an interesting game for me because I was probably 10 or so, 9, 10, and I saw like an ad. Like, this was right before Thanksgiving, so we're getting all these, newspaper ads from Toys R Us and Walmart and stuff. And I saw that they had the Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness GameCube for only $100. Obviously, this was about the end of the GameCube's lifespan, and I had gone and done yard work pretty much every weekend, saving up money so I can get it for myself. This was like the first console I bought for myself. Like I had a Game Boy Advance and a Game Boy Color, but those were just given to me as gifts. This was like the first time I went out and earned it for myself. And so I got to play Pokemon XD, and it was a really good game. It was the sequel game, and they had introduced a new way to heal or cure. I can't remember the terminology they used. Oh, purify shadow Pokemon. That was this bizarre triangle circle thing that required like harmonizing other Pokemon with it, and it was just completely going over my head. So I had to go and do it the old-fashioned way. And if you've never played the game, the way it worked was you would encounter a trainer, and they would have a corrupted Pokemon, a shadow Pokemon, and they'd be slightly stronger but have less attacks. I think it was like Shadow this thing or something like that. And it's like the one game where you are encouraged to catch a trainer's Pokemon. You had to catch the trainer's shadow Pokemon, and then you could journey around and have it in your party, and it has this meter, and as you use it, the meter goes down slightly, and once the meter's down to 0, you could purify the Pokemon. But Gale of Darkness, and like I said, introduced this new way of doing it, and you didn't need to do anything to the meter. You could just bring it right to this laboratory, do some harmonization thing, and it would instantly purify just like that. And I was totally going over my head, so I kind of fell out of the game when I was doing all these very hard shadow Pokemon all at once, trying to get them all purified, and it took forever. And because I was doing it the old-fashioned way of just taking it to this location and putting it in this spot and curing it or purifying it after I had brought its meter down to 0. I will say these are probably the edgier Pokemon games. I still remember Colosseum starting off with your character attacking a enemy lab, breaking out, blowing up the building, and escaping on a motorcycle. He had left with like this arm, this robotic arm that he clipped to his own arm, and it made he had a cool cyborg arm. I was like, oh, this is so cool. I was like, oh yeah, it's edgy, just like I like it when you're a little kid. It was great. They were, for the games themselves, they were, okay. They weren't like fantastic. The stories weren't amazing. Gale of Darkness kind of uses mostly the same locations. Honestly, like there's a lot of similar spots that you can find in Colosseum. I do remember the music being somewhat memorable, and the animations were pretty decent too. I think most Pokemon had like their own custom animations for attacks and when they're defeated, stuff like that. They didn't use the full... What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, a lot of those animations and stuff, like, I remember when watching footage and, like, looking in the books and stuff from back in the day, like, a lot of the Pokemon animations, especially from the Gen 1 and 2, they reused the models and animations from Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 on the Game Boy, or not the Game Boy, on the Nintendo 64. So they were able to, I'm glad they were able to transfer that over to Colosseum and Gale of Darkness to, keep the Pokemon feeling unique.
Yeah, I think they were working with a smaller Pokedex, though. Like, I think there were only 49 Pokemon you had to purify in Colosseum, and I think there was about 60 in Gale of Darkness. But I believe your actual, like, your GBA could interact with it, and you could transfer your Pokemon over into Gale of Darkness. At the very least, I don't know if you could with Pokemon Colosseum. So I think you could theoretically get every Pokemon that way. But they only had, I remember there being just the shadow Pokemon. I think Gale of Darkness had this weird feature where like you can like lure Pokemon in these special lure locations and you can get non-shadow Pokemon. It was like a really weird system. They were pretty useless Pokemon too, so I wasn't like out to get like a Zubat or anything like that, or a Phanpy or whatever they were. I will say this was a weird era for Pokemon because this was when like Gen 3 was just spamming out all these spin-offs. Most of the games we've talked about so far started with Gen 3. Pokémon Ranger was a Gen 3 game technically. Mystery Dungeon, Pokemon Pinball, these two. There was a couple other we're not going to be talking about, I don't think. So there was like a lot of games they were just pumping out at this time, and I believe the only way you could totally complete the national decks in those Gen 3 games was if you happened to have Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon XD, and also a Game Boy Advance player hooked to your GameCube. What was that?
Sorry, go ahead. No, you finish first.
Yeah. I believe Colosseum had Ho-Oh, and obviously Gale of Darkness had Lugia, Shadow Lugia. And you had to play, and in the case of Colosseum, you had to pretty much complete Colosseum. You had to do this whole defeat 100 trainers or something thing just to get Ho-Oh at the end, and Gale of Darkness, you had to beat the final boss and capture his Lugia and purify it in order to get it, and then transfer it over to other games.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna say. Like, you had to, like, it was cool that you could get Ho-Oh and stuff like that, but I remember, like, from the guidebook, like, it said you had to go through this long gauntlet of fights in order to get it, which at least you get, a cool reward for beating it with, because Ho-Oh, that's a pretty cool Pokemon to get as like a reward for all your hard work. But I remembered with, at least, again, this is just memory from the guidebook, not the game itself, but I remember that a lot of the Pokemon you ended up getting for, like, the ones that are, like, the dark ones, or they're corrupted or whatever, that there were a lot of Gen 2 Pokemon, because it was, like, stuff like Miltank and Heracross and stuff like that. And, like, you could get the 3 dogs, Raikou, Suicune, and stuff like that. And I remember the guidebook pointing out that if you got any of the dog Pokemon, it was a good idea to take them to the spot where Jirachi could show up if you had a special item, and use that item to purify the 3 legendary dogs instead of worrying about the other Pokemon, because it was like, well, with a legendary Pokemon, they're going to be a little more naturally stronger than some of the other ones, so it's a good idea to use, these one-time items on them so Jirachi can show up and use its magic, and boom, there you go. Now you have a fully recovered Entei or Suicune or something like that,
Yeah, and in those 2 games, the one that purified Pokemon was Celebi. You pretty much took it to Celebi's forest, and it would purify them once you brought its meter down to 0. Colosseum did have one of the cooler pre-order bonuses, which was a disc that pretty much let you spam Jirachis onto all of your GBA games.
Oh, that's the Jirachi thing. Okay, yeah. All right. Sorry, I was thinking that Jirachi was the one that you took it to, and, like, you made the wish, and that's why I did that. But Celebi makes more sense, considering
Jirachi, they would just... I believe you could, like, just keep getting Jirachis. Like, I remember I didn't have it myself, my friend did, and he had, like, a bunch of Jirachis. He got me a Jirachi, and it was kind of like the opposite of the Manaphy thing we were talking about with Pokémon Ranger. I remember Manaphy you could only get once, like the egg once. This one you could just keep getting dozens and dozens of Jirachi.
So essentially it's like Oprah, just coming in giving Jirachis to everybody.
Exactly.
Oh, nice. All right, so you guys good with that? We can move on to the next one.
I will just say one more thing real quick. I do hope that, and it could be a total long shot, but I'd be cool I think it'd be cool if they tried to bring back Colosseum and, like, Gale of Darkness to the Switch, if they, not that everything should get a remake or something like that, but, so at least, like, a newer, or, like, if they did, like, an HD version of the 2 in, like, one package or something, just so if people missed it back in the day, they could have a chance to try. Because, the GameCube it did well enough for itself, but it was also a system that not many people did really get into. So, it'd be cool to see if they tried to bring it back again. I'd pick it up.
Nintendo seems very protective of their GameCube games for some reason. Like, everyone wants a Melee re-release. That hasn't happened yet. We only just got, Sunshine, Super Mario Sunshine. We haven't gotten any of the Pokemon games we just mentioned. Where's Kirby Air Ride, guys? Come on.
Oh my god, I put so many hours into Kirby Air Ride.
Yep, me too.
Oh boy, well, talking about something that I put a lot of time into, Pokemon Go.
I still put a lot of time into that.
What are we at? Are we 3.5 years into this one?
I believe, what was that?
Are we 3.5 years into this now, Pokemon Go?
2016, like summer 2016. So yeah, about 3.5 years.
It was summer of 2016 because it was the summer after I graduated high school.
Oh, jeez.
I remember because I have a Samsung phone, I was able to sideload this like 2 days before it came out in the United States. There was the APK files going around, and I thought, my God, how boring is this? Because at the time, I was at my parents' place up in rural North Carolina, up in the mountains, not always good coverage or whatever, and I played it for like 3 or 4 days, and I'm like, man, I'm not really catching anything. I'd go up and down, walking the dog up and down the street, and like there'd be nothing there. Then again, this is like rural North Carolina. Now going into town, and we'd go out to eat most nights, and I would just kind of walk up and down the strip malls where we were going and catch a bunch of stuff. And I remember like taking over like 5 or 6 or 7 gyms just in this little town, probably because I was the only one playing it at the time. And yeah, I played it, and my wife ended up getting it, and we've got friends to this day that play it and go to all the community days. They're always out in the walking through parks doing this. And I stuck with it and played it every day from that summer. Eventually, like, really loved it. But from that summer through Memorial Day of 2017 and Memorial Day weekend of 2017, I was like locked into my house for like 4 straight days. I had 2 2,500 word essays to write, and I just never left the house and never played. And by the next week, I was like, oh, I haven't played in like 7 days. And it's refreshing not to feel like, oh my gosh, I got to go right up the street to where I got to do something, because I live way at the back of a 500 home community, and there's no Pokestops or anything here. So if I wanted Pokeballs or whatever, it was always driving around to get the stuff. And it was like, that was my detox. And I've literally never played it since. But they
have added a lot of quality of life improvements to it that might get you back in. Like the raid passes are now remote. So if a gym if you can see a gym with a raid somewhere on the screen, you don't need to be within walking distance of it. You can just start the raid from wherever you are, as long as it's visible on your screen.
Made it till the raid times.
They also give out tons of free items. Like I just collected 30 Ultra Balls while we were talking. They legendaries are pretty easy to get. Like they have pretty cool events every so often. I think they're going up to Gen 6 this week, I believe, or next week, actually.
Wow, that's wild. It's been a couple months since the last time I played, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when I stopped, it was like right after Gen 2 came in.
You must have missed the events they do too, or the research tasks, where it's
I never had
do all these things. At the end of 7 or so of these research tasks, you'll get a Mew or a Jirachi. I finished the Victini one today, actually. Celebi. They've started doing them for community days. They did a couple for like for Halloween. Halloween has a regular one that you get to do. They do like limited time ones.
That's Spiritomb for Halloween, right?
Yeah, although this year they gave out Yan Mask, and you were also guaranteed a shiny Spiritomb, I believe, at one point.
That is one of the things that's interesting about Pokemon Go, is that shinies are so common with everything that they do for events.
Yeah, they gave out tons of shinies, especially on community days.
I've only ever run into 2 shinies in all my experiences with Pokemon, and one of them was just a few days ago.
Like, I think Electabuzz was last week, and I just got a shiny Electabuzz. This week's gonna be Magmar, I believe.
They're doing community days every week now?
I think they do 2 now. It kind of varies. Like, I remember they did a EV community weekend where it was all Saturday and all Sunday. Like, it's not just 3-hour events on a specific day anymore.
Wow.
They were doing this weird thing for a while. I don't know if this is what they're still doing, but they were doing like 2 a week, but they were like incredibly boring Pokemon that you could vote on. Like, I remember people voted for Weedle, so there was a Weedle community day.
Everyone's favorite Pokemon, Weedle.
Yay!
Which was annoying. That was annoying because one of them was Sandshrew, and I needed Sandshrew to complete my Pokedex and Let's Go Eevee. And I wanted to vote for Eevee was Sandshrew isn't available in Let's Go Eevee. So I was like trying to get Sandshrew to happen because I needed to transfer it over. Like, no, it's the meme. Let's do Weedle, guys. It's funny.
I don't know. It's pretty funny.
There's a gym literally outside my my apartment, and it's being guarded by a shiny Weedle right now.
Oh, jeez.
It's the king of all the Weedles.
So I was playing this December of 2016. I got to go to London for a week for school. And I remember, I mean, I didn't really know anybody except for I'd been going to school online for 4 months with some of these people. So, I mean, a lot, and geez, it gets dark there in December at like 4 p.m. So I just remember walking the streets of London playing this quite a bit in the freezing cold and catching like Mr. Mime outside of the Eye of London. I could always like go in and say, and Jinx were over, lots of Jinx there. But I had a lot that I'd caught in my week in London that year.
Just a sidetrack real quick. Did you get a chance to ride the Eye of London while you were there?
Didn't do it either time, no.
That's too bad. It's a cool view if you go in that.
Did so many other things, but yeah, like the first time I stayed there, I stayed a 2-minute walk away from the Eye.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that one of my administrators was supposed to do the program with me, and then she backed out, but she had booked like really expensive hotel rooms for us. When she thought she was going, she booked. And from my hotel window, I was in a circular hotel in a roundabout right across the water from the Big Ben Tower.
I was going to say, you must have been pretty close to like Piccadilly Circus then, if you were close to the Eye of London then. I think Piccadilly Circus isn't too far off from there.
So I walked through everything. I mean, I just kept... That first time I was there, I was just there alone. So when I was there for a week and got there 2 days before classes started and got to stay a day after classes were done. So it was fun just walking around. And yeah, pretty much everywhere I walked, I was like, might as well play Pokemon Go while I walk, because where am I ever in an urban area like this? Like I said, pretty much every time when I'm home, if I was playing, I was driving, parking. And I remember one time I was parked outside right up the road from us, about 2 miles away. There's this random tower in the middle of nowhere. And it was on a U.S. highway. It was one of those 1950s, hey, let's build it here because people will stop by on the highway and do whatever. And there's a junky little museum right next to it and a little strip mall. And there was 6 Pokestops all right there. Like, you could park in 2 locations and hit 3 Pokestops on one and 3 at the other, and the tower itself was a gym. So I was sitting outside the tower one night, I don't know, 9, 10 o'clock at night, because this is when my child was about 6 months old, too, playing this. I would drive around at night to get him to fall asleep, and sometimes I would just park and play for a little bit. And I remember a cop pulled up next to me.
No.
Like,
you're going to be that guy?
Like, he points to me to roll down the window, and I'm like, oh, shit. Like, am I not supposed to be parked here at 10 o'clock at night? And he starts talking to me about battling the gym.
I was hoping that was where the story was going.
He knew exactly what I was doing.
The story would go.
Yeah. He's like,
There
are you
was one
battling the
time
gym right now? 'Cause I will battle if you are.
Something semi-similar happened to me one time. There was I was at a CVS, and it happened to also have a gym right next to it, and it was for a Pokemon I wanted. So and it wasn't super strong, so I could have done it by myself. It was a raid. So I pull over in the parking lot, and I'm waiting for the raid to start, and then I see a guy pop up on my screen. There's another person taking part in the raid. I'm really confused, and then I look out my window, and there's a guy in the car right next to me, and he's looking over at me. He's smiling and waving, and I'm trying to pretend so hard I'm just on my phone, not playing Pokemon Go, and there's a guy right next to me. He's playing it next to me. I was just trying to pretend so hard that the social game is just me playing by myself.
Pokemon Go, bringing strangers together since 2016.
Yeah.
Pokemon, go away.
Did it make you Pokemon go to the polls?
What?
Did it make you Pokemon go to the polls in 2016?
Oh, gosh.
God. All I can think of is just that stupid like song on YouTube with the little kid who's like, I play Pokemon Go every day.
Well, what was great is so this came out in the summer, and I do clubs after school 4 days a week. I'm like the only person who even does more than 2 clubs even. I think one lady does 2 clubs. Everybody else most teachers don't, and the few teachers that do, they'll like find something to do once a week. And me, I bring in like $40,000-$50,000 just in club money for the school alone, and I get a crap amount of it. But I remember calling the lady in charge of the clubs at the beginning of August that year, and I was like, "Hey, I got a new idea for a club." She's like, "Hit me up. Yeah, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "How about Pokemon Go?" And she's like, she goes, "I keep seeing that on the damn news and everything." She goes, "You actually think kids would sign up for that?" And what I did, and I ran it just one time, we did a 12-week course where like we stayed in the classroom for half an hour, and the kids could bring their DSs and 3DSs and whatever and Pokemon cards, and we would just trade and play and whatever for half an hour. And I had to work with IT to get our Wi-Fi to not block Pokemon Go. Because, I mean, the kids all just had iPads that could only work with Wi-Fi. They didn't all have 4G-enabled devices. And we would just walk around the school and, walk outside on the sidewalks, just walk around the school and catch stuff. And we had a couple days where, like, we all caught Rhyhorn. That was like well over 1,000 CP at the time, and that was a big thing. Like only 2 months after it had released, all the kids had that, and I had probably 25 kids sign up for it. And a couple years later, and then I only did it that one time. I was like, this can only be this popular once. So I didn't.
You're right.
And I didn't do it another semester or whatever. And like a couple years later, I'm getting my 5-year longevity award at school. And my boss is up in front on the podium, 100 teachers there, and I kind of figured I was coming up next, and she's like, to the only person who could convince 25 sets of parents to lay out $200 to play a freaking free mobile game. And she called me up, and I remember afterwards I was talking to the after-school lady, and she's like, that was like the best club. It was all profit. They didn't have to spend a penny on that club. Because usually I have them buying me $100 of toys for this or robots for that. And she was just so excited. I made so much money that time just by, hey, come play Pokemon. And I was in talks with a Nintendo sales rep to come to my club one day. And she just finally ghosted me and never showed up, because that was also right around when Dragon Quest VII was coming out on the 3DS. And I had gone in like August or early September to a GameStop to play the game. They had a rep there from Nintendo letting people play Dragon Quest VII like a month before it came out. And I ended up, like, I was the only one there playing Dragon Quest VII. And so I ended up talking to the lady for an hour and just kept playing and everything. And I was like, oh, I'm a teacher, whatever. And she's like, you're a teacher. And I told her about, like, I was going to have this Pokemon Go club. And she's like, that's awesome. That's great. And she's like, you know what? She was the Nintendo rep for Tampa. And she's like, oh, like, my boss is the regional person for Orlando. Like, she would definitely come out and do a giveaway, bring plushies and all this stuff to your school. She's like, that's something we kind of do, whatever. If we can get it in front of 25 kids and do something, that'd be awesome. And I must have traded like 15 emails with the lady, and one time something came up and she couldn't make it that week, and then I just never heard from her again. But Pokemon Go, good times. All right. So yeah, that was our, as Bluestar just pointed out, that was our 20-minute segment on a game that we had 0 notes on. And probably going into another one that I might be the one talking the most about. Another spin-off type thing is really ridiculously popular right now, at least through YouTube streamers from what I see, and talk about price increases. My goodness. And of course, yeah, I mean, just because I clicked onto this a couple times, now it's all over my Google feed. I swear, every day I get a new story about a new YouTube streamer and a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $300,000 box or set of cards or something. But the Pokemon trading card game. Any of you guys ever play the actual trading card game?
I've never played the game, but I definitely collect the cards because they're cool.
I collected the cards as a kid. I never played the official game, but fun story, I did get in trouble one time for trading cards because our parents found out and they're like, you can't be trading your cards. We got them for you. They're your cards. You have to keep them.
That's what the trading card part of the trading card game is.
I know.
It's not the Pokemon keep your card game.
I know. If you figure out why that was the case for me as a kid, you let me know.
I used to collect the cards when I was a kid, and I played them occasionally. I totally fell off as I got older. I kind of hopped back on briefly when they were doing that Pokemon Evolution set a couple years ago, which was just reprints of the first couple sets, like the first a couple specific cards from that set, and they add a couple other things, like I think they were doing Pokemon EX cards at the time and Pokemon Break cards at the time, and they threw a couple of those in there. I thought that was kind of a cool, like, nostalgia piece to and I bought a couple sets of Sun and Moon, but I didn't really dive too deep into it. It was a very expensive hobby. To just be collecting the cards, so I kind of just fell off it again. Now I just kind of live vicariously through watching unboxings on YouTube, pretty much at this point. I'm up to date on what's happening in terms of the sets, just from watching people unbox them.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I heard about this Jake Paul situation.
Oh gosh, and like I almost never watch YouTube, so I read all these stories, but I almost never understand who the hell they're talking about. But Jake Paul, I remember because there's a kid in 5th grade this year that all the way back in 1st grade, I used to have him in my math class, and he used to tell me, just call me Jake Paul.
Yeah.
As a 1st grader, he was so enamored with this guy years ago. Like,
who's Jake Paul?
He's a dude on YouTube. I don't know what else about him, but all I know is a kid used to love him and want to be him.
Him and Logan Paul. They were like a set of brothers on like YouTube. They were like famous. Like I think one of them was like a Disney Channel actor or something. And then like one of them, I think it was Jake Paul kind of took off with that It's Everyday Bro song on YouTube. That became kind of a meme for a little bit, and then he just kind of picked up from there. And I think he does like a video every day or every other day, and it's both him and his brother just do these like wild antics. Like I think they boxed some YouTubers a couple years ago or something. There was that Japan trip that Logan Paul did that ended up in the news, like national news. Like my parents knew about this, where he apparently went to Japan, and part of his vlog was he was going to go to the suicide forest to see if they could find a dead body, and they did, and they filmed it, and they posted it on YouTube.
Oh, I've heard about that one. Didn't they get in like big trouble for doing that?
I think that was just Logan Paul. I think that was just Logan Paul's thing. Okay. It's hard to keep track because they look the same, and their names they're kind of the same in age, so I can never really tell who did what. But I do know that Logan Paul was the one that did the Suicide Forest thing, and I think Jake Paul did the It's Everyday Bro song or whatever. And I think recently what happened was, for whatever reason, Jake Paul was just like really into getting Pokemon cards all of a sudden, and he was doing like these live streams unboxing these incredibly expensive cards, and I think you could people could buy into them, where I think what it was like Jake Paul had set a price and someone could pay for that pack to be opened on stream. He would like read a message out and he would send the cards to you, whatever cards you got from that pack. Mm-hmm. And I think the box itself was like $300,000 or something.
That number sticks in my head.
Crap.
It was ridiculous. Oh yeah,
so, like individual cards in those sets could be worth like thousands of dollars, just like individual cards. Mm-hmm. It was like
it was like the original
unopened box.
It was a sealed box, unopened from like '98 or something like that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and there was
That's a lot of money for one of those, man. Holy cow.
These like money guys, like these guys who were just into investing, had seen Jake Paul's thing, and they saw the market for Pokemon cards was suddenly rising, so they decided to buy into it, and they did something similar to Jake Paul, where they recorded a live stream of them unboxing cards, and they got it from the same guy, I believe. And it was this super sketchy live stream. It looked like it was being filmed at like at a murder or something, like the mafia. It was really fuzzy and in poor quality, and everyone was social distancing, so they were all sitting at this really long table at a very wide distance from each other. The cameras were super far away from them. I don't think they could even they even showed you looking at the cards, and it looked like they were like planning some murder, basically. And the guy who they bought the card, who was buying them or selling them the cards, was super sketchy. The whole chat was like exploding, making fun of this guy. And when they opened the box, it was like there was a couple base set cards, but then there was like open packs with 2020 cards in there, like the year 2020, like new cards. And it was clearly like a repackaged thing that they were being scammed out of. And this was all live on stream on YouTube that you can watch.
That definitely popped up for quite a few days in a row on my thing. That the guy was like, "Oh, I didn't know it was a scam."
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I would recommend digging on YouTube to watch like some person or whatever run down or watch the live stream. It was pretty funny. They got like legit Pokemon like YouTubers, and they even asked them, "Hey, would you have bought this?" At first sight, you're like, "No." It was very clearly sealed. It's pretty funny.
Well, I've got a long history with the trading card game. Back in the summer of 1999, I was just about to be a senior in college, and my girlfriend had moved to town, so I was like, I don't really want to go back for the summer. I didn't want to anyway. I was sick and tired of moving back and forth. And since my girlfriend was like 5 minutes away from college, I was like, hey, can I just move in for the summer? It'd be great to just stay in the area and not have to move 2 hours back home. And I was like, our college got off like May 1st or something. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do for 3 months, And I'd been working in elementary schools for the past 3 years. I knew I was an elementary ed major. And I was like, you know what? And somebody actually mentioned, like, why don't you go to a nanny agency? So I kind of like on a whim was like, whatever. So I drove to a nanny agency, and they were like, wow, you're only like the second male ever to walk through our doors. And I got a job the next day. They hooked me up with a family that was like 4 minutes down the road from me. One of them was a big executive at Disney. The mom was a ER doctor or whatever. And they had 2 boys going into 5th grade and 7th grade. So the kids were old enough to pretty much make their own breakfast and do most stuff. They just needed someone to like take them to camp, or the parents were like gone by 6:45 in the morning. I just had to be there, make sure the kids ate, and we'd go to camp or 8 at 9, and I'd go pick them up at 3 in the afternoon. And there were plenty of weeks in the summer that I was there all day long. So they had just gotten into Pokemon cards, summer of '99. They hadn't been out long, and you couldn't find Pokemon cards anywhere. So I taught them how to use the phone book. Something you had to do in '99. Use the phone book, call up, ask for the toy department at Target or Walmart or whatever, and be like, "Excuse me, do you have Pokemon cards in stock?" And the parents would like leave them $10 a piece every day to go do something, and they would like, "No, we don't want to go mini golfing. No, we don't want to do this. No, we don't want to do it. We just want to buy Pokemon cards." So they got enough cards together, and I learned how to play to teach them how to play. And I took them to tournaments. We'd go to like Borders or Barnes and Noble. Someone would have tournaments in the afternoon, some days a week. And I remember a couple years later when the Game Boy Color game came out, I played that and really enjoyed it. And you can listen to me talk about the second Game Boy Color game that was fan translated. Go back a couple episodes to our GBA or GBC episode. But I think my kids got a card last year randomly from McDonald's. They got this Fennekin card, and they were both obsessed with this frickin' Fennekin card like last October. It was, like, just one card was like this. They would fight over it, and it was like put in a certain spot, or they'd hide it from each other. And my kids 3 and 6 last year, and it was like, oh my god, like it's a frickin' card. One card.
Fennekin is a good Pokemon. Don't knock Fennekin.
And then I had actually had a bag of Pokemon cards in my desk at work going back to 2016 when I had this club, some kid in the club one day was just like, "Hey, Mr. Mason, I got tons and tons of cards just here." And he gave me a bag, and like I've since gone through it, and it's in all our decks now, but it must have had like 20 EXs in it and a bunch of other really good cards. But then again, I work at a really rich school, and to those kids, it was probably like, I don't play with these anyway, just take it.
We don't play with those.
So, I mean, I'd had that thing sitting in my desk for like 3 years. So I brought one, like, just basic card home and, like, gave it so the kids could each have a card. And then, just to remind myself how to play, I downloaded the app right around last Thanksgiving and started playing. And because there's a free app and you can upload codes from packs of cards you get and actually have packs of cards that you open online and build your own decks online and whatever. But there's a whole set of like 20 trainers that you can beat at 3 different levels, and there's no story or anything. It's just like there's an offline component that you can kind of do instead of just battling people online. Well, I went through and I beat them all at the normal level, and then my older son saw me playing and he wanted to learn how to play since they had these 2 cards that they've been fighting over forever. And so last year he learned how to play from the app. It was great. I didn't have to really sit and teach him too much. I showed him some strategies and whatever. But for Christmas last year, I ended up buying 6 of those theme decks. It's a pack of 60 cards, comes with the energy, comes with everything like kind of really balanced well. And that's where we started. And right now we're up to 30 different theme decks that we have in our house. We've got hundreds of extra cards too. I will go on tcgplayer.com and buy individual cards often enough. We don't buy the packs at all, really, and take the risk on that. I'm like, I'd rather buy for $5. I can buy like 4 EX or GX or V cards at this point, and I don't really care about the really rare ones. My kids don't have any sense of value for those, so whatever. They just like, oh look, we got a Pikachu EX. Let's put it in one of our electric decks. So I want to say from January through probably August, I had averaged 2 games a day with my kids playing the card game. And my older son is pretty darn good at it, pretty good strategy. Even my 4-year-old, he knows all the rules and he can lay down cards and pretty much play on his own. We'll give him some pointers every now and then. I've already got 7 more theme decks to give the kids for Christmas. But yeah, we've really gotten into it quite a bit here in our household this year. And over the summer, even when I was fooling around looking at Dragon Quest games that I hadn't played, it really made me want to get into Dragon Quest Rivals, which I put 15 hours in, which I know is like 1/100th of the time that Denizen Jay has done. Right, Yangus, you're friends with him on the Switch.
Yeah, he's got quite a few hours into that game. Let's just put it that way.
I think it's in 4 digits at this point.
Yep, last one I saw.
Whoa!
Yeah, no, I've messaged him, and he was the one who was telling me this summer. He's like, "Oh, it'd be a great time to get into it because they're gonna have like not offline, but like 1-player content available." I mean, I put in like 15 hours, which was kind of the limit of what I could do. Really, not being able to read anything, but. It was really depressing to find out that Tact was coming over and not DQ Rivals, because Rivals was a lot of fun. But there we go. There's my Pokemon trading card game rant.
I will say, Pokemon Company is very smart to put those codes in in all their products, because that makes kids go and play like you said the app too.
All right, going down our list, let's see what we got coming up next. We have a game that Woodus actually sent me because there was a demo for it on the Switch, and my kids enjoyed it for all of, an hour, and then Woodus sent me his copy, and they enjoyed it for all of about maybe 5 or 10 hours before it became too one-sided and way too much screaming and crying, and I just put it in an envelope and mailed it back. But we're talking about Pokken Tournament.
Well, to be fair, that is kind of how it can go with fighting games if it gets a little one-sided. I mean, that's just how it. No.
Yeah, like at least on Smash Brothers, they too can fight against like 6 other people. like computer generated ones, so it's not just 1 versus 1 the whole time. So there's less fighting in real life when the kids and I play. Whereas Pokken Tournament, the 1 versus 1, it started way too many arguments, and they even decided kind of on their own that we shouldn't play this anymore. But who has put some more time into this?
Well, I got quite a lot of time with it on the Wii U. I'm into fighting games. It kind of started, like even when I was a little kid, like playing Smash Brothers. And the older I got, the more I started playing more traditional fighting games. And when I saw that Pokken was coming out, I'm like, well, that's kind of an interesting concept for a Pokemon spinoff. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird too that it's called Pokken Tournament, because it sounds like it's supposed to be like Tekken. Well, sure enough, the game was made with the help of Namco Bandai, who are behind the Tekken series. So like, okay, that makes sense then. And the game is a one-on-one fighting game featuring a few different Pokemon from I think of the Switch version, which added in all of the newer characters that were released in Japan arcades. It's up to like either 24 or 25 fighters or something like that. So it's a decent list of monsters to choose from the series. And you have most of the generations represented through the playable roster and through the assist Pokemon that you can have team up with you. How it works with the game is like the story for it is in this particular region of the world that the Pokemon and their trainers sort of team up to do these special kind of one-on-one fights. Instead of like a normal Pokemon battle, it's more of a involved process, or a bit more of a unique take on the one-on-one battle. You don't really have to worry about like type advantages or disadvantages and stuff like that. It's just more so the Pokemon uses their moves but in more creative ways. So like and that then translates into their movesets. So, for instance, you have a character like, what's the third evolution of the Machop family? The one with the 4 arms.
Machamp.
Thank you. Machamp, thank you. I'm bad with the names, what can I say? But you have Machamp, who he is pretty much your grappler close-range type fighter. So he can like get really close, do big, powerful throws. He does have a projectile where he picks a boulder out of the ground and throws it at the opponent. You have characters like Pikachu, who, they're small, but is very fast and can get in your face pretty quick, or can be pretty evasive. And then you have characters like Gardevoir, who, using a lot of the, psychic type attacks, can act as more of a projectile keep-away sort of character, where you can, kind of create... it's a keep away / zoning type character where you can try and get your opponent to fall into a particular spot. So you can either then try and close the gap real quick, or you can just keep them at a safe distance while you slowly poke at them with different projectiles and stuff like that. And with the game, how it works is that you do get a level up the Pokemon. You can apply like stat bonuses when they reach a level up. So like you can increase their health a little bit, or you can increase their strength a little bit. You get to choose actually what you increase. Unlike the normal Pokemon games where you just like random stats will just go up. And what's fun about Pokken Tournament, like I actually played this game for quite a while on my Wii U. I also got a few different fights in with members from the den as well, and some of my buddies who happened to get the game. So with the online did work pretty well for it. And what's nice is that every Pokemon did feel very different from one another. Like even though there were 2 Pikachus, you had Pikachu and Pikachu Libre. The 2 of them felt completely different. Yeah, you get the little Pikachu in the wrestler outfit, which is pretty funny. But the nice thing is they didn't feel like they played the exact same. Like even in that case where it's the same Pokemon, they played entirely different from one another. And as someone who does play a lot of fighting games, it's cool to see that they were able to translate that into this game. And for it being kind of a weird concept for a Pokemon game and for a fighting game too, with how the fights work, it does work fairly well for itself. With how the fighting works, you either are in the fully 3D, you can move everywhere sort of phase, or there's the close-up, like move left and right phase. So it's kind of like you have elements of a 3D fighter like Tekken or Soul Calibur that will then transition into more of a regular 2D fighting game style, like with Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. And it'll go back and forth depending on like what particular moves that you use, or if you use like your big like super powered move with the pressure of the R button. Like for some of the Pokemon like Gardevoir, when you use that, they'll Mega Evolve, and then they can use this big follow-up attack. You have a character like, I believe it's Suicune, where Suicune will get this rainbow aura around it, will move like incredibly fast, and can then close the gap really quickly too, or like its special beam, like ice beam attack, like the range increases. So you get some different elements in play too, that essentially like the power up state is like your super meter almost for that character. If you ever played like another fighting game, where like if you build up like a bar, you can use like 2 attack buttons, and boom, there you go. You can use like the super fireball or something like that. But this game's kind of different too, because they did implement a bit of a story mode to it for the single player content. Because what it is like, it's like a regular Pokemon game where it's a human with a Pokemon, where it's like, oh, I want to be, the best fighter in this league. So you just slowly work your way up the ranks, and eventually there's this shadow Pokemon that keeps attacking, and you find out that it's actually a Mewtwo that was, I believe what happened was there's this orange crystal that can corrupt a Pokemon, and basically what happened is this Mewtwo in particular was stabbed with one of these crystals, like in its shoulder, I believe, and it's essentially turned it into what they call Shadow Mewtwo, where it's got like a completely black body. It's got the crystal sticking out of its shoulder, and its powers are, I believe it's a bit more of a corrupted version of regular Mewtwo, because you do eventually get regular Mewtwo as well. And like the Pikachu Libre thing, they do play completely different from each other. They utilize powers differently, and you realize that like not only is this crystal affecting it, but if it gets out of hand, it could start affecting some of the other Pokemon in the region. And it, you pretty much then it becomes a plot to not only trying to get to the top of the league, but you also need to try and stop this from happening to anybody else, because it could just totally mess with the flow of this entire region of the world. But have any of you guys played it as well? Did you play it too, Evan?
Yeah, I played it. Honestly, not super intense. I don't even think I finished the story mode. All it sticks out to me is how embarrassingly awful the voice of the announcer or whatever it was. I was surprised that it made its way to a Pokemon game. I thought they would have, done a better job with the voice acting. It wasn't good. It wasn't good, guys.
No.
It's the only thing I remember about it.
No, it was. This was one of those times where, like, when the voice actors start kicking in, like, it's no exaggeration to say that it's like early PS1 voice acting, where people might be talking like this when they are speaking to you, like just all over the place. It's terrible.
Yeah,
it's one of those few games where I changed it to the Japanese voice setting as soon as I could, and honestly, that was so much better.
And she speaks constantly too. Like, she just keeps going and going. It's not like pauses in between. She goes, "Oh my good, ooh," and she just keeps talking. Like, oh my gosh.
Yep.
Which is crazy, because I remember in Battle Revolution, I think it was the Wii Pokemon game they did. Just a brief tangent. They had the voice actor for Brock and the announcer from the anime, and he did all this like unique voice, lines. It was like, Zapdos hits him with a, paralyze or whatever. I don't know. All this like unique and pretty good voice acting, and then here comes Pokken Tournament, whatever, and it's like, oh wow, oh look at that! It was embarrassing.
I can't believe it. Yeah, it was like first take almost. Like they should have done something else. It's terrible.
Did you see that? Wow.
You talking about that? That reminds me of I don't remember I don't think we put this one on the list at all, but like back on the N64, there was Pokemon Puzzle League, and they got like all the anime voice actors for that one. They got everybody for that one. I remember that as a kid. So it's funny that they were able to do that with an N64 game, but then with the Wii U, and I don't even think they changed it for the Switch release either, that they had this voice actor who talked like this. It's so exciting! But the voice acting aside, like the game does play pretty well, but if you're not used to fighting games, I could definitely see it being something where it's a little harder to get into, because I'm with your boys with you talking about your boys Platy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could see why that could be frustrating for him as well, especially if one of them's getting it more over the other, because it's hard. Fighting games can be difficult, and it is good to play them with other people, I think, in order to sort of see where you got to improve at and what like your strengths, weaknesses are, and learning from your opponent. But at the same time, with Pokken Tournament being such a vastly different playing fighting game compared to other fighters that were coming out around that time, Pokken's definitely a bit of an oddball to get into, especially if you're not used to fighting games. Even though I know how to play a lot of different other ones, it still did take me a while to fully understand how the the switching mechanic works between the fully 3D arenas and the standard move left and right movement, the 2D phase almost you would call it. But
I do remember there was this no worries. I do remember there was this weird situation where, if I remember correctly, with the Wii U version, if you were playing with friends in person, one of you had to be using the Wii U gamepad. Everyone else could be using a GameCube controller or something, or a Pro controller or whatever. But that puts you. My understanding of fighting games is that your controller is very important. People, they have their own fight sticks, and they or maybe they do use a controller, a standard controller. So forcing someone to use the gamepad, which, let's be real, isn't something I don't think a lot of pro fighting game players will be using, was kind of a weird thing at the time.
Yeah, using the fighting or the gamepad, I mean, it does work all right, but I think when I did see I did watch a few tournaments for the game back when it was new and when it had been out for a year or two. You did see that a number of players would have configuration set up so they could use fight sticks for the Wii U version. I think luckily now with the Switch version of the game, it's a lot easier to get a fight stick for it, because a lot of them now with the fight stick plugins, it's just the standard USB sort of port plug-in, so you can just plug that right into the side of the Switch charge station, and boom, you're good to go. But I mean, the Wii U pad worked fine for it. I thought when I played it, but I think only reason that it worked that I thought was fine was because I had played a lot of Tekken Tag Tournament 2 on the Wii U with my buddies, and luckily, the setup, the default setup, was similar to what you would have to do for Tekken Tag 2. Your left button, or your one button would be for left punch. You have that corresponded to the Pokken Tournament, right? So that one, I think at least I was able to get into that a little bit more. But I totally agree with you, though, that it's one of those games that I think a fight stick is going to make it so much easier versus the big, awkward, holding Wii U gamepad.
Yeah, the Wii U didn't have very many games in general, but it also didn't have very many fighting games. I think it's literally just Pokken Tournament and Tekken Tag Tournament.
Yep.
That I can think of.
Yep.
All right. Well, looks like the end of that tournament is come. And Blue Star, you are on because you wanted to talk about Pokemon Conquest.
I do want to talk about Pokemon Conquest. This is actually, I know I said earlier that Explorers of Time is one of my favorite games ever. As far as a side game, because to me Explorers of Time is a mainline. Pokemon Conquest is actually one of my favorite games. I have 80 hours into my file, and I still have not beaten all of the scenarios. This was actually my first tactical RPG, so a lot of people will say it plays like Fire Emblem. I actually only started playing Fire Emblem earlier this year, so to me, Fire Emblem plays like Pokemon Conquest. So I guess essentially the premise behind the story is that there is a continent that is suspiciously shaped like the Pokemon that is said to have created the world of Pokemon, and it's divided up into 17 kingdoms, one for each type, pre-fairy type, because this is a Gen 5 game. And the sort of legend that is passed down through this continent is that if a warlord can unite all 17 kingdoms, the legendary Pokemon will appear. So essentially, the game is you recruiting warriors and befriending Pokemon to try to build up your army so that you can take over other kingdoms as you sort of grow and get better, and essentially take over the continent. There are a lot of really cool mechanics because each warrior has a specific Pokemon that is their, best friend Pokemon that they can achieve a 100% link with, and that essentially means they can get to level 100. Basically, Pokemon get stronger based on how in tune they are with their warrior. So it's just a really cool concept, and the gameplay is a lot of fun. It does get tedious because you end up with a lot of warriors and a lot of kingdoms, and there's a lot of things to do. But there's enough auto functions in the game that you can manage it. So even with evolving, the warriors themselves can also evolve, and it's cool to see. At least I think so. That when your warriors evolve, I say that with air quotes, their appearance actually changes to sort of match their Pokemon that is their true 100% Link Pokemon. So there's a girl who ends up dressing up like Frostlass, and you can definitely tell with her pose and the art style that this is supposed to be Frostlass, which I just think is cool and charming. But there's a lot of gameplay and a lot of strategy there. Each Pokemon has, a move that they use as their attack. So like Luxray uses Thunder and it hit 3 tiles in front. I'm going to use a different example because I've totally forgotten the name of that Pokemon. But Frostlass uses Icy Wind, which hits 3 tiles in a horizontal line in front of it. And so each different Pokemon, has different AoE attacks or single target attacks that, you can sort of use depending on the battlefield to essentially tactical RPG your way to victory.
See, this one was never on my radar. I know one of the guys I podcast with has told his story multiple times about the lengths he went to get this game the week it released, because it was just not a big release, and every GameStop had 1 or 2 copies total, but apparently a lot of people kind of wanted this.
See, now that I've actually picked it up again for this, just to refresh myself for this, I'm actually thinking about going back and trying to beat more of the scenarios. There are so many though, so who knows if I'll ever get there, but there's definitely enough there, and especially since I've put it down for a good couple of years now, just sort of relearning the mechanics might be kind of fun. Again, that's assuming that I have time to actually do fun things, because what is that?
I will say that I remember from the advertising for this game that, and it's probably just because it happens to be involved one of my favorite Pokemon, that there was a warlord guy who looked like he was dressed up in samurai armor, he's got the full mask and everything, and his partner Pokemon was supposed to be Groudon, which is one of the legendaries from Gen 3.
Yes, that is correct. That is one of him. There's another guy with, sort of similar samurai armor who ends up paired up with Aggron, which is also very, very cool. And there's someone whose perfect Pokemon is Zoroark. So there's a lot of edge in that guy. There's one girl who is supposed to be with Miss Magius, one guy with Articuno, which Articuno is basically my favorite Pokemon, so I like that a lot. But yeah, your hero in that game starts out with an Eevee, which is cool because it gives you a lot of versatility with how you evolve that eventually, and at the same time, even though maybe you don't have a 100% link with a Pokemon, you can still get up to 90 or something. So I think one of my main Pokemon that I used was actually a Leavanny, or the bug and grass type combination overpoweredness, because that's a word.
It conveys a certain meaning of overpoweredness.
Hey, I mean, it's past my bedtime at this point, so...
All right, well then we'll get close to wrapping this up. Evan, you never played Conquest, did you?
No, this one totally went by me. This was around when I was dropping off Pokemon, and I didn't even hear about this game until I saw it sitting on shelves, or I saw a review on IGN or something. I totally missed this one, and nothing about its gameplay or aesthetic spoke to me, so I just completely let it pass me by.
I recommend but that's just me. I'm biased.
Can it really be a tactical game though if you don't get to marry your characters and make them have kids?
Well,
you can marry your characters to their Pokemon. Okay, maybe not
oh my
quite
God.
like that, but
an emotional connection.
Oh my God. But, well, as we learned from a recent user on the Den, that apparently people only played Fire Emblem in the first place for the waifu stuff, even back in the early days of the series. It was never about the gameplay.
Hey, it got a resurgence just around the time the waifus came in. Some coincidence? I don't know.
I think the only game before before Awakening that had the marriage stuff was I think it was 4 on the Super Nintendo. I don't remember what that first one was, because Tharcia 776 was the second one, but on the Super Nintendo. But the fourth one I think had the child marriage had the marriage and the child system, I believe.
Child marriage.
Well, I mean, they might be able to marry the kids eventually. I don't know. Fucking knows.
It's past all our bedtimes. So, all right. Well, talking about waifu, that's the perfect excuse for me to go into our last game here, because my real life waifu, Pokemon Snap. I actually kidded with my wife the other day. I was like, hey, if you want to be on the podcast for a couple minutes, this is actually a game that you played. You could talk about something. She's like, I don't want to do that. Whatever. She goes, I'll probably be asleep by the time you talk about that. But she did tell me, she's like, okay, well, here's what you can say on the podcast about it. Growing up, she's got an older brother and a younger brother, and her older brother is big into video games. Younger brother, somewhat. They're actually all in town this week because her younger brother's getting married tomorrow. And the older brother's got a daughter a little bit older than my kids who they love playing video games with her, and she turns them on to all the different games that they want to get. They see each other maybe every 4 to 6 months, and she's always got a new Mario or a new Pokemon or a new something that they're like, oh, can we get it next? Can we get it next? And we usually do. But my wife was very excited this summer to hear that another Pokemon Snap game was going to come out, which after hearing that it's going to come out, we've received no information on in 5 months now. But she said growing up, her brothers were always playing video games, and she always hated any game in which the characters died or got knocked out, if you're talking Pokemon. So she would never really play video games until one of them got Pokemon Snap. And she said, that and Animal Crossings became her jam when she was young because characters didn't die. You just kept going about your day in Animal Crossing and just kept taking pictures in Pokemon Snap.
I do remember you pushing a Charmeleon into a lava pit so that evolved into a Charizard. So I don't know about that.
That helps.
That does help.
Yep.
That does help it evolve so you can get a better picture.
So, but really, you're the photographer, you're not dying. Maybe you kill something else. You're not dying.
We kind of torture some Pokemon with the pester balls. It's like poison, pretty much.
I mean, I actually remember playing this all of, a couple minutes to an hour a few times back in the summer of '99. I think it was out back then when I was babysitting, nannying those 2 boys. They had it, but even for them, they were like, this game's kind of lame. Let's go buy some more cards. But, I mean, I don't remember much more about it other than the game was on rails and you pointed your camera and took pictures of Pokemon.
It actually had a good amount of the Gen 1 Pokemon, because this came out when Gen 1 was pretty much was the only generation at the time, but it had, it's been a while, but I think it's got 75 or 76 of the Pokemon from Gen 1. So, I mean, you got a good chunk of them there. One of the last ones you can go after is Mew after you do certain events. But I remember when I was a kid, I think maybe this might have been the first Pokemon game I had, if I remember right, because I really didn't play many games on my Game Boy Color, which I talked about whenever I was first on the podcast, like a year ago or so, but or on Slam Time Prime, excuse me. But I remember when having this game as a kid that not a lot of the other kids in my neighborhood at the time had this game, so I was kind of one of the cool kids because I had a Pokemon game on the N64, so everybody wanted to come over and check it out. Well, then, you know, you show them it's about taking pictures and stuff, and some of them would be like, oh, it's a really cool idea, and another one's just be like, well, that's not fighting, that's not cool, I won't do that. But I remember replaying this game a lot when I was younger and trying to figure out like different ways to get pictures of certain Pokemon, because even though there is only like 75, 76, whatever the number is for the Pokemon in this game, there are a lot of ways that you can affect the Pokemon and take pictures of them to like either receive different points or get them into different poses or to have them interact with different objects in the environments. So even though there is
Surfing Pikachu.
Yep, there's the Surfing Pikachu, there's the Pikachus that you can get to stand on different stumps, and they'll use electric shock.
Oh yeah,
like Thunder Shock.
Pikachu and balloons too.
Oh yep. There's that one. Then there's the Pikachu being carried by a Zubat, and then there's a funny one with Dittos that are in the shape of Bulbasaurs. So if you take a picture, like Oak is like, "Oh, that's a Bulbasaur," but if you have it next to a Ditto, he's like, "Wait a second, they have the same face." You know, that might be also one of the best things about this particular game too, is the voice acting for Professor Oak. So for us, like ragging on the voice acting for Pokken Tournament for being bad, this game is the kind of bad where it's really good and really funny, because you get lines from Oak like, "You were close." Like his voice almost sounds like I don't know if it actually is the guy who voiced Oak or not, but it's like they cranked his voice up a few notches, so he sounds like, "You were close. Welcome back." He's got some pretty funny lines in the game when you hear him with the few times that he does speak. It's always great when he says "great" too. He's like, "Great, great, great." But I remember too with this game, and I didn't even remember this until I saw a playthrough of it over on YouTube, just has something on in the background. Oak is a very particular person when it comes to photos of the Pokemon themselves. So case in point, with the playthrough I was watching, they had gotten this picture in the volcano area where Magmar was attacking a Charmander for like trying to eat the apple that they threw at the Magmar. So you get this effect where Magmar like shooting off like fire blast or whatever the attack is, and it causes like this huge explosion of fire. And all you really see of Magmar in the explosion is just like its silhouette, and it's like this really cool flame effect and stuff. And it looks like it would make a pretty cool picture, right? Well, they show it to Oak and pick that for the Magmar picture, because when you show Oak the pictures, you only get to pick one picture per Pokemon. They show him the picture, and they're like, "Oh, he's going to give us really good points for that because of the pose and everything." Oak looks at the picture, and all his response is, "Oh, that Pokemon's not centered. You don't get enough points for it." Like, he is super particular, and I remember that being the case, because there were times where, like, in one of the last levels, there's a valley where you go through, and you can get a Magikarp to jump into the waterfall, and it then bursts out of the waterfall as Gyarados. It's supposed to be like that old story of, like, you know, how a salmon swims upstream, and like other myths like that. And just because I didn't have the Gyarados like centered in just the middle of the picture, it was making a pose that he liked because it was like roaring or, you know, like shooting out of the waterfall. He liked that pose, but because it wasn't centered, he's like, "Nope, sorry, this isn't a good picture. You didn't get it right in the middle of the camera, and it's slightly off." He's too particular. He's too particular. Oh boy. But did you guys have much experience with it too then, Eel, or did you not play this one very much when you were younger?
Oh, I actually I first heard about this game when I had a friend. He had an N64. He had all the good N64 games. Like I saw them all at this kid's house. But a couple of years ago, like 5-6 years ago, I bought it for the Virtual Console on the Wii. It's actually also on the Wii U Virtual Console, guys. Just saying that. And I played. Played
everything.
Gotta put something on there, I guess. I actually played a lot of it. I almost completed it, actually, Pokedex-wise. I was only missing like 4 Pokemon. I wouldn't say I was close to completing it, though, because completion also matters in terms of how many points you score in a board, on a map or whatever. So I wasn't doing any of that. I was more focused on completing the Pokedex. I was missing some weird ones like Muck or something, but I got all the like strange ones, like I mentioned that Charizard, Surfing Pikachu. I played a lot of it. I actually picked it up earlier this year, planning to see if I could complete it, but I was like, it's been too long. I've completely forgotten how to play this game. What's important? I was too out of it to go back to it. So maybe next year. I was planning on getting the Switch game if that ever happens. Sometime in 2021. I was planning on picking that up and then going back to the N64 Snap sometime in 2021, hopefully. But
Yeah, this is definitely a game too where as you replay the levels, it's nice to replay them too because as you make progress in the game and unlock new courses and you get enough points from pictures and stuff, you do get some upgrades. Like one of them is you get the apples that you can throw, and in some cases when you throw the apples, like the Pokemon will get really happy, so you'll get better picture poses from that particular Pokemon, whatever the case might be. You get stuff like the Poke Flute, where if you play it, you can then cause some Pokemon to react to it. Like one of the ones that you can actually see in the very first level, but you can't do anything with, is Snorlax, because, it's Snorlax. He's sleeping all the time, unless he's hungry. So with the Poke Flute, you can actually wake up the Snorlax, and it'll start dancing around in this little part of the stage that it shows up in. And that's your chance to take a picture. And then Oak all of a sudden realizes, oh, that's a Snorlax. I couldn't tell by its giant feet and face until it was standing up and dancing.
I do remember they had like I can't remember what they were called, like hidden signs or something. They were like all those like natural formations of like the rocks or whatever that forms a Pokemon. So like if Krabby might not be in the game, but there's a Krabby rock formation or something like that.
Yep. So what it was that every single stage had a different hidden Pokemon sign in it. And like the first stage you were talking about, there's a giant rock formation in the shape of, I believe it's Kingler, because one of them has a giant, one of the claws like a giant one. In the volcano area, there is a sign of, it's either coughing or wheezing, because one of the little volcano spouts, if you throw a pester ball into it, will start shooting out clouds in the shape of coughing or wheezing. It's one of the two. And like then you have one in the cave area, or no, not the cave. A really easy one to find is in the very beginning of the last stage prior to the secret unlockable one, the valley, where right when you're going down the first waterfall, you actually get to see a giant mountain in the formation of Doug Trio. And if you get pictures of all 7 of those, or 8, however many there were, because there was one per stage, you then got to go to a special bonus stage called the Rainbow Cloud, which is where Mew shows up at. And you actually do get to see Mew in the opening cutscene of the game, where I forget what the character's name is supposed to be, but the kid who's taking the pictures, I know he's
Maybe they call him Pod Snap or something.
Yeah, because he was in the anime at one point. But anyway, he is just walking through one of the areas of the game, and he's trying to snap pictures of this elusive Pokemon. And you see its foot and its tail and a little bit of its details. Well, then when you get to the end of the game, you're like, oh, wait, he was trying to take a picture of Mew the whole time. So it's kind of a nice little reward then if you were able to find all the signs, whether you found them by yourself or you got a buddy would have told you how to find them. It was a cool little reward to get that then, because Oak would look at all these different pictures of Mew and be like, oh, well, this is the rare Pokemon Mew. I've only heard about this one, blah blah blah. And I think after that,
you could also trigger the legendary birds too, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So 3 of the stages had the eggs for the birds. So the cave area had the egg of Zapdos, which would then cause all of the electrical machines in that particular area to all be lit up instead of having to do all the other requirements for them. You had Moltres in the volcano, and Articuno then is in the underground. Oh God, I remember what that other one is. It's another underground sort of cave-like area where you fly through it, and you actually have to have the Jinx wake up and perform their little song and dance in order to break the egg open for that one. But it's cool that you get to find a few different legendaries and a few of the elusive Pokemon too, because I think, if I remember right, Dratini and Dragonite show up in the Valley stage too, and I know they're not technically legendaries, but at that point they were kind of rare Pokemon since not many people saw them, so it was sort of a pseudo legendary at that point, I guess. Nowadays I don't know if they're common in the games or not, but there were a few things that you could find as like 4 legendary Pokemon are some of the harder to find ones, like Lapras too. That's another one that can show up, and it shows up really far away at first on the beginning beach stage, but if you keep taking pictures or throw apples into the ocean, eventually it gets really close and you can get a nice picture of it and everything. So there is a lot of fun benefits to replaying stages and sort of figuring out how the mechanics work and all the items work, because you can get some really cool pictures with them too. So I'm really hoping that this new Pokemon Snap game that's going to be coming out either next year, 2022, just depending on how the COVID situation right now is going to affect development. I hope that it'll be a nice follow-up and that they will take a lot of the elements from the original that worked so well, but really, kind of push it in the right direction so the Switch game can really take advantage of the system and, bring in a lot of new concepts for how you can take pictures of the Pokemon and whatnot. So I'm really hoping that game turns out well, because like your wife, Platy, when I saw it, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Because even though I'm not super big into Pokemon now, I would definitely get that game just from remembering how much fun that I had playing the Nintendo 64 game by myself and with some of my buddies when growing up.
Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't realize how much love there was for Pokemon Snap until I saw that live stream where they were announcing Pokemon Snap on YouTube. It was, and like anytime I mention it to people, like just random people I know, like, oh, I played Pokemon Snap. That was such a great game. Like all these people who didn't even play games were like, oh, I love Pokemon Snap.
Nope. Talking without the mic unmuted. What I was saying is, in an era when you can sell like $20 million Animal Crossing games and just have that really non-gamer casual person picking these games up, might as well bring back some other favorite casual ones.
There's no game that landed at a more perfect time than Animal Crossing.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Boy, it's going to be really funny with that long pause if the edited version of this doesn't have that pause, and Soft's going to jump to Platty's.
Nope, it won't have the pause because I'll hit that delete silence thing.
Well, just so the audience knows, then there was about like 20 seconds of silence before Platty unmuted himself there, so that's why we were laughing.
So we've covered, a ton of games tonight. Is there anything else anybody wants to get in before we wrap this up?
I guess I will just say briefly that another good N64 game from the Pokemon stuff that I believe has not been re-released digitally is Pokemon Puzzle League, which I talked about a little bit before. It was basically, oh god, what are those games that it's like? There's a puzzle series from Nintendo where it's like the different puzzle blocks you move, like there's red, blue, yellow, different colored ones like that. You got to go like 5 in a row in order to break them. And for one of the Western releases, because they didn't want to use the it's called Panel de Pon over in Japan, I believe. Because they didn't want to use that property, they used Pokemon instead, and they used the Pokemon anime because that was really big at the time, back in the N64 era, and they used that property on top of the Panel de Pon gameplay. And I remember renting that a few times when I was a little kid, because there was a video store that my parents would take me to every weekend, and I would get up, rent a game for the weekend. I'd pick that one out a few times. I wasn't very good at playing it because I didn't really understand the concept of how I was supposed to win. I just kind of jumped in and just tried to see how I did. But I remember it being, a decent game, and, it had the voice actors from the anime. It had different designs from the anime, too. Like, I think one of the costumes the Team Rocket can actually wear is the outfit they had in the first Pokemon movie where they look like Vikings. If you guys have ever seen that movie?
Must be from Minnesota.
I mean, I did grow up in Minnesota at the time when I played it, so I mean...
No, that was the joke in the movie. They were dressed as Vikings.
Oh, that's right, it was. Yeah.
Maybe
right.
they're from Minnesota.
I was gonna be like, damn, that's a good guess. How do you know? Damn.
Literally,
I forgot about that. It's been years since I've seen that movie. But But yeah, I mean, I remember it was a good little game. I don't know if any of you guys have played that one or not, but it was a fun little puzzle game. I wasn't very good at it, but I remember it being an all right time with it.
It was on the Wii Virtual Console. I don't know about the Wii U, but it was definitely on the Wii Virtual Console. I've seen it a couple times.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool. Well, I'd say I go check it out now, but you can't do that anymore with the Wii. So
you could definitely tell from the screenshots I saw. They definitely copy pasted Pokemon, JPEGs onto that game.
Alrighty. Well, now I think we are all done. That's it for this episode of Slime Time Side Quest. Definitely want to thank Evan and Bluestar for joining us to talk about some of the best Pokemon spin-off games out there.
No problem.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. Now, we didn't really talk about this before, but we never really discussed like which side quests or which side games are like what side dish. Like which one's going to be the potatoes and the gravy, which one's the green beans, which one's the corn.
Mystery Dungeon is mashed potatoes. That's not up for debate, but everything else, you guys go crazy.
I'm just going to call Pokemon or a Pokken Tournament the sweet potatoes then, because you either like them or you don't like them.
There's no in between.
Nope. But again, thank you for joining us, guys, and I'm glad we were able to get a lot of discussion out of these games. Definitely had some fun conversations with all of them, for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. You might have noticed that the only time on Slime Time we ever mention Patreon is when we say we don't use Patreon. We're just all longtime fans of video games that want to speak about the topics and know and love so much. If you do have any money that's burning a hole in your pocket and you'd like to donate, consider sliding on over to the Dragon's Den at www.woodus.com/den and click on Support This Site. Woodus has owned and maintained the Dragon's Den site for over 20 years, and I'm sure he'd appreciate any donation. If you don't want to directly just hand over the money, want to buy something and get some proceeds to him, you can use his Amazon affiliate links to make purchases, especially if you're ordering maybe the new Dragon Quest XI games or the 3DS games. Evan was on when we talked about the Dragon Quest Monsters Plus books. Pretty much anything Dragon Quest related that is on Amazon, Woodus has an affiliate link there, and he'll get a little proceeds of that sale.
If you have any suggestions for a future side quest episode, we'd be happy to hear from you. You can reach out to Platy via his Twitter, Plattym3, or you can find him on the Discord for the Dragon's Den. You can also contact me at YangustheLegendaryBandit on the Dragon's Den via personal message or on the Dragon's Den Discord. We do have a list of ideas, and we'd be happy to hear from you to either add some new ideas to the list or to revisit a topic if we get enough interest for it. We actually did just get a nice post from somebody on the Dragon's Den, and apologies that I don't have your name written down to mention it, but they did suggest a few different things like Shin Megami Tensei, gave us some feedback on some of the episodes that we talked about with some of our discussions. So, it's nice to hear from people and to let us know what either they want to hear about or just that they enjoyed some of what we've talked about. And if you got any ideas, we'd be happy to hear from you.
Bye, everyone.
Side quest complete.